conference and all these wonderful speakers, and I am so honored to be here today to speak to you, to give you some ideas about how to move forward in your lives, to connect with others, to have hope despite the circumstances that some of you might be in. And I'm hoping that you will understand that I'm in a rather difficult circumstance. My husband of 33 years passed away a number of weeks ago, about 3 months ago. So I am in one of those zones that you actually don't really know who you are or where you are. And I could tell you my story. I could sit and talk to you about what I'm going through. But really, crying is bad theater. I know this. And I feel that the way in which I can cope with working with you today, 14 minutes is all I have, is to actually talk to you not about my story necessarily, but about stories that my friends have told me that I have found useful to live my life. And so this is what I'm going to do in the next little while, is to just talk to you about the ways in which I've shaped my own life through stories that other people have told me. And, you know, I think one of the things that is important, and you're all so young and beautiful. I mean, I walked in through the lobby and I thought, I'm the oldest person here, but never mind, I'll carry on, you know. Life is full. And is that, you know, you need to know that no matter who you are or where you are or what you're doing, that you too will find your voice. That you will find a way of speaking your truth to people who care about it eventually. I was a very shy, sad person for many years of my life. And I have found my way of maneuvering myself through life to actually find something that I love to do, which is to teach, is what I do. I teach teachers, and I also speak and do speaking engagements across the world. I've just finished working with 17 child indentured soldiers from Uganda who came to Canada to find a way of telling us who they were and to tell us how important it was for us to acknowledge them despite their past. And so I think you need to believe that you yourself will find your voice, that you yourself will sing your truth, that you yourself will find ways of becoming something that is important, that will change the world, and to not get overwhelmed by it. And when I talk about voice, I'm not talking about voices that are precocious or voices that are necessarily rude, right? You know, as teachers, we sometimes want people to not voice who they are. Like we want silence in the classroom, which of course means there's no learning. But anyway, I won't go there. I'm talking about being able to speak about something that is important to you and to be able to say things that are true and to be able to challenge critically those who are telling you something that might not be true. Because that critical capacity to challenge others is an important way forward in the future. And I just have this little story about a kid that I love and a teacher that I don't. And here it is. A little girl was talking to her teacher about whales. The teacher said it was physically impossible for a whale to swallow a human being because even though it was a very large mammal, its throat was very small. The little girl stated that Jonah was swallowed by a whale. He was. He was swallowed by a whale. Irritated, the teacher reiterated that a whale could not possibly swallow a human being. It was physically impossible. Well, the little girl said then, when I get to heaven, I'll ask Jonah. And the teacher asked, well, what if Jonah went to hell? And the little girl replied, well, then you ask him. The critical capacity to question others. So I'm going to to begin by saying that I want to work with 7 images. I'm really conscious of time. I'm always being the person, the teacher, who stopped teaching on time because my students would leave my classroom anyway. See you, miss! You know? So I've learned to stop on time, so I've got to work really, really quickly through these images. And the first images I wanted to show you was a glass of water. I have a friend who's an amazing keynote speaker and who goes into prisons to work with prisoners all across the United States and Canada. And he tells the story of playing. He plays the piano and then he speaks brilliantly, and he's amazing. You need to have him come to the next conference. And he tells the story about how he's playing the piano one day, and the prisoners in this particular prison are walking in and sitting down, and a very large man sits in the front row, and Michael continues to play his piano, and then this man gets up and walks out. And Michael continues to play and thinks to himself, as we all would, well, you can't win them all. You know, I'm trying my best, and this guy's walked out on me, and he hasn't even heard me speak yet, and who is he anyway, and etc. 5 minutes later, the man who'd walked out came back and put a glass of water on the piano and said to him, "Thought you might need this. You're working so hard." And Michael said, "How dare I make assumptions about people? How dare I judge people before I know who they are? How dare I live my life in a negative way when this man had nothing but generosity of spirit in his body?" So when I work with students and teachers and people, I want to say the glass of water is about reciprocity. It's about not making assumptions about people till you get to know them. And if I could say one thing to you, and I say that to my student teachers at York, do not judge people until you get to know them. Open your arms. Live your life in a more open, endearing, enduring way, and it will stand you in good stead. Be prepared, I often say, to be surprised by people, by who they are, how they come across, what gifts they give you, the water in the glass. That's my first image. The second image is this one, footsteps in the sand. I had the opportunity to go a few years ago to South America to work with the Department of Foreign Affairs to talk about democratic education, about how to teach fairly in an unfair world, how to make sure that all students have access to education that will transform their lives. This is my life's work. I care about making sure that every kid, not just the talented, not just the gifted, not just what we consider smart and who knows what that is, have opportunities to be educated so that they can live publicly happy and privately happy lives. Anyway, I had this opportunity to go to Brazil and to Paraguay, and I had a driver. It was sort of amazing. So to get into a car, be driven around, you know. And anyway, beats the Honda. Not that I'm bitter. Anyway, this man was amazing, and he talked to me about how his wife had just had a baby and how they had invited one of his wife's relatives, a 14-year-old girl, to come in from the country to look after the baby. She was 14. She did not read or write. She had not had the opportunity to go to school. And so this young 14-year-old woman stayed at home with the baby, was fantastic with the baby. And 2 weeks after she arrived in Asunción, which is the capital of Paraguay, they said to her, "Here's some money, go out and get some bread and some milk for us." And so she left, this young 14-year-old girl, and she came back not. She was lost. They waited and they waited and they waited. She was lost. And they were devastated. And finally, after 24 hours, they found her. And she said to them, I know you think I'm not smart, but when I leave my house to go on a voyage or a journey or to go and do an errand, I can read my footsteps in the sand, and so I can find my way back to where I came from. I can read, she said. I just read the world differently than you do. And there was pavement and no sand. And as a result, I could not find my way home. And so I use that picture, that image, for us to remember that we decipher the world differently as human beings, depending from whence we came. Location, location, location is not just a real estate term. It is actually a term, we are shaped by where we're from, and so that we need to be acknowledged about what we know and how we read the world differently. And one of the things that I care a lot about is to acknowledge that we do read the world very differently and that we all have huge amounts of intelligences. The third image is of a friend of mine who is a very powerful CEO of a board of education. And I asked him once, I said, tell me, how did you become this? He said, oh, I didn't start off this way. Let me tell you. I was in the wrong crowd, in the wrong school, and I was one of the teachers who made sure that I was negative about everything. And he said, it was only after I got married and my wife handed me a jar of lilacs, and she said to me, take these, take them to the staff room, put them on the staff room table, let the rest of the staff enjoy it. So he did. And he arrives, and all his old cronies, all the guys, is just eat what you want, doesn't matter, So he puts the lilacs down on the table in the staff room, and one of his old cronies says to him, so what do you think this is, a funeral parlor? And he said, at that moment, I decided I didn't want to be that kind of person anymore. I was 32 years old, and I decided I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to change the way in which I lived my life. I wanted to go from being negative to being positive, to bloom in a different way. And I think for some of us who sometimes feel that we're stuck in who we are and where we're from and where we're going, there is the capacity through attitude, through understanding of who you are, what is your essence, that you can change your life, that you yourself can redirect yourself into new paths. Another image, I'm working fast here, is this amazing picture of Colette Begonia, an amazing girl from Saskatchewan who in 1980 looked like this. She was I have one more minute. I'm not going to get through all the images. I'll get through just these ones. There she is. She is a star athlete. 2 weeks later, she is in a wheelchair. She's in a terrible car accident. She herself doesn't believe or understand how it is that she's going to manage to live her life. She receives her rewards at awards in a wheelchair. And it is only through her resilience and her belief in herself and the support that she gets from her community and from her family that she becomes a Paralympian. That she herself manages to achieve despite her circumstances. I'm going to work really quickly because I'm determined to do this. This is my last image, the tarmac. I was in Saskatchewan giving a keynote at the Saskatchewan Reading Conference. I meet this amazing teacher. You know a good teacher when you see her or him. And she said to me, I taught in this northern community in Saskatchewan. I taught kids who had lots of issues and families. And I was listening to this woman talk, and I knew I was sitting in the presence of brilliance. She talked about the kind of person she was. She talked about what she gave to that community and to those kids. And her marriage falls apart. She has to get on the plane. She has to leave and go beyond this community back home with her own children to live a different life. And she said, I get on the plane, and I'm standing there waving goodbye, and I look out, and the entire community, parents, elders, teachers, kids, running down the tarmac saying, "Don't leave me. Don't leave us. Please, you've been so effective." And so I say to you, you want to lead your life so that when you leave whatever you're doing to go on to do something else, you have people running down your tarmac saying to you, "Don't go. Please, don't go." I wish you all the best in the world. Thank you for having me.